Welcome to today's lunchtime forum, Open Access and the Research Landscape. My name's Sam Scoulding. I'm the Senior Academic Liaison Librarian responsible for supporting all postgraduate and research level students and staff across the university. And my co-presenter today is John Dalling, who is our Head of Collections here at Library and Learning Resources. For anybody who doesn't already know, this week is International Open Access Week. It's a global event now entering its 13th year, first originated back in 2007. And it's really an opportunity for the academic and research community to come together to raise awareness of open access issues and to learn a little bit more about the open access agenda, as well as sharing their own knowledge and experience of open research. We should probably begin by giving a broad definition of what open access actually is. So open literature and scholarly research is essentially digital. It's available online. It's free to access for the end user. And in most cases, it's free of most copyright and licensing restrictions. And this is really made possible by the consent of the author and also by the internet as a platform for delivery of open access research, really. So the modes of delivery of open access research would be through online journals and online open access repositories and archives. It's important to highlight at this point, actually, that open access literature, although it's free to access for the end user, it's not free to produce. So although it's less expensive than more conventional publishing routes, the emphasis here really is on finding a better way to cover those publishing costs than simply charging the end user and then creating unnecessary access barriers. The benefits of open access are huge, and they permeate through many different levels, from the author researcher right through to the general public. So for the author and researcher themselves, they would get increased exposure for their work, which often results in higher citation rates and significantly increased funding opportunities, of which open access is often a condition now, as we know. There are also more opportunities for diverse and underrepresented groups who may struggle to get their work published via other more conventional publishing routes as well. The benefits of open access then also extend to other researchers and practitioners in the field as well, who can build on previous research and find practical applications for those findings. Open access also means that researchers in developing countries have greater access to the latest scientific developments that might normally be monopolized by major Western publishing houses, often at significant cost. This increased transparency also means that the public get to see research findings for themselves as well, which in turn then demonstrates value to the taxpayer and also gives governments more scope to incorporate the latest research into their policy making. So the benefits of open access, you can see, are widespread. I think we'd all agree that never before has open access research been more important than during 2020. Obviously, we've had health emergency this year that's brought governments and the scientific research community together to work for a common cause, really. So the open access agenda has gained increasing momentum since January, February of this year. We've seen governments and funders and researchers forced to collaborate with one another, really. And that forced collaboration has led to rapid and open sharing of research outputs and unparalleled scientific progress, which, in terms of helping develop a potential vaccine for coronavirus. One of the other things that you'll have noticed this year, hopefully, is that subscription publisher restrictions were temporarily lifted during the main period of lockdown, at least. And you may have noticed through our own university library website, we were able to give you access to much more online material than we're normally able to, purely because publishers lifted these restrictions temporarily for us, which was great news for everyone, really. To give you some figures then to fit in with that, more than 50,000 research papers were made available within the first few weeks of the pandemic, which just shows what can be done when people put their minds to it, really. And those research papers were read or downloaded by over 150 million people. So to put that into context, for any gamers out there, Grand Theft Auto, one of the most popular computer games, took 7 years to reach 130 million downloads. So we can see now that open access and coronavirus has come together to be one of the most sought after research topics of all time. So the question on everyone's lips now going forward is, will this be a catalyst for lasting change? And that's a question that's, reached beyond just publishers and librarians and researchers generally. I hope that the progress we've made this year in terms of open access isn't lost once this situation hopefully resolves itself. We're fingers crossed that it will be a long-lasting change that we see. So making the latest research available as open access is one thing, but making it discoverable is the next challenge. So, when research is stored in institutional repositories, for example, how do we find it without knowing where to look? And there are many aggregators of open access research out there that provide online access through directories, portals, and other plugins that are there to aid your discovery of open access literature. I've listed just a few examples that you can see there. I will pop the links for these into the chat column during the session today, so you'll be able to make a note of these and access them later. If you are watching this as part of an online recording after today's session, we'll make the links available there for you as well. But just to talk you through some of these options, I will show you what they look like. So we've got a couple of directories. First of all, the directory of open access journals and the directory of open access books. So these are good portals, not just for accessing open access literature, but also if you're new to the open access publishing world, maybe you're looking to get your own research published, these can be really useful tools for identifying open access journal titles that you could approach and publishers that you could approach as well. So the directory of open access journals that you can see on your screen now has over 15,500 journals amongst its titles from 134 different countries and over 5 million articles available on there. And the directory of open access books. So open access books generally are harder to get hold of than journal articles, I have to say, but this directory has almost 32,000 academic peer-reviewed books on it from just over 400 publishers. So those are the directories. The next open access resource that I listed there is something called Open Door, which some of you may be familiar with. Open Door is a global directory of open access research repositories. So you can see that you can search by repository name. You can also go into the advanced search option there, and you can search by repository subject specialisms as well. So not just institutions, but subject specialist repositories as well. Core is the next aggregator that we've listed here. This is by far, I think, the single largest aggregator of open access research papers. You can see they're marketing themselves there as the world's largest collection of open access research. And they've got in excess of 200 million papers from around the world. And they've done what you'll see a lot of aggregators will do there, which is link immediately on their homepage to all of the latest research relating to coronavirus there as well. If you like something a little bit more visual, which I certainly do, then I would recommend the Digital Commons Network. This is one that I often highlight to students in my session. You can see that this has got 3.6 million works on there from over 603 institutions. And this is quite a nice one. You can just hover over the actual the coloured disc there. If you click on a section, it will zoom in. And then you can just click in to browse different areas of specialism, and eventually it will take you through to the open access articles on the subject theme that you've chosen. So you'll see a real-time global map there showing you all of the downloads that are currently happening within the last 24 hours for this subject area. You can see that it will list the institutions, the repositories that these articles have come from, so it's very easy to trace their origin. And the good thing about these aggregators as well is that they'll often, it is quite easy to contact the researchers who've produced these articles, because they'll often share their social media handles or their institutional email addresses. So you can often contact researchers and authors directly and ask them questions as well. The next little tool that I wanted to mention to you really is one that I was really excited about when I found out about this. This is something called Unpaywall. And it's a browser plugin that you can use. It has to be used with Chrome, I think. You can see there it says it's fast, free, and legal. And basically, this is a plugin that you can add to your browser, and you'll see the little padlock symbol there over on the left-hand side. So when you're browsing the internet and you come across a journal article that is hid behind a paywall, essentially, look for the little padlock symbol on the side of your browser. And if it turns green, because it's generally grey, but if it turns green, that's an indication that that article you're looking at that is behind a paywall is actually available as open access somewhere else. And you can then click on the little green padlock symbol and it will take you to whichever site that article is available in. So it's really good for flagging up open access articles that you may normally not be aware of because you're just seeing what of the version that's behind a paywall. I discovered that at a British Library webinar that I attended this summer, actually, and I was blown away by that one. I'd not heard of it before. Talking of the British Library then, that's my final aggregator of open access that I wanted to mention. And this is a good one for the research students that are with us today as well. This is Ethos. And Ethos is an e-theses online service run by the British Library. So if you're looking for open access doctoral theses, they have over 500,000 on Ethos, and they are largely open access. So that's a really good resource that I often recommend to students as well. So that's just a selection of a few that you could be looking at. There are more out there, but those are the ones that really sort of grab my attention. Okay, so making your own research more discoverable is also another way to be part of the solution. And one way that you can do that is to get yourself an ORCID ID. So if you've not heard of this before, ORCID stands for Open Researcher and Contributor ID. And it's a registry of unique researcher identifiers. So, we're not as unique as we'd like to think we are. Some of us might have quite common surnames. And one of the things we worry about is correct attribution of our research papers. And this is a really easy and convenient way of making sure that correct attribution takes place. So it links your research related outputs together, all of the publications that they've appeared in, any data sets that you've produced, and any research grants that your work may have been affiliated with. So think of it like a digital object identifier that identifies a particular article, except this identifies you as a researcher and all of the work that you've produced. So it's managed entirely by you. And it moves with you throughout your career. So if you were to set up your ORCID ID now and then you were to leave this university and go and study at another university or work somewhere else, that ID will move with you throughout your career. Research funders are also increasingly integrating this into the application process as well. So it is something that you might be prompted to do or that you might come across naturally anyway. Just to give you a few stats for this one, we've got 338 active UWTSD repository users currently, people that are contributing work to the repository. And of those 338, only 8 have got registered ORCID IDs that we know of, so that's just 2%. Now, it could be that some of those researchers are uploading their work to the repository and they've just forgotten to add their ORCID ID in. But this is something that we want to try and get people in the habit of doing, and it would really help us, but also help you as a researcher. It's really easy to register online. I'll pop the link in the chat column for you later as well. It's a 3-step process. It literally takes a couple of minutes. So it's definitely something that's worth doing. Okay, so if you want to publish your research papers via the open access route, what publishing option? you, because it can seem like a little bit of a minefield. And the two most common publishing routes would be the gold route or the green route. There are others. I can't remember them all off the top of my head. I know there's diamond and bronze and various things. So I'm just going to talk you through the two most common ones. Starting with the gold route then. As part of the gold route, your article would be published in an open access online journal, so an entirely open access journal, or a hybrid journal with an open access option. So as part of this process, the author would then pay what are known as article processing charges, or APCs. So the charge is paid by the author rather than the end user. So there's no subscription fee for libraries to access these journals, and there's no charges to the end user for accessing that particular article or piece of research. This article is then immediately made available via the publisher website. There's no time lag. And as such, it's automatically REF compliant. So for any research staff amongst us who are thinking about REF compliance, if you're going down the gold route, it's automatically REF compliant. What we would ask then is that a copy of your research paper is also deposited in our repository for digital preservation. So we'd usually add the bibliographic details and then maybe link to the publisher's website where that article is stored. As part of the gold route as well, the copyright is generally retained by the author. The alternative to gold route, and as part of this process, your article would be published in a subscription journal. So there's no APCs, no article processing charges charged to the author as part of this process. But the way it's made open access then is that a self-archived copy of your accepted manuscript is made available through our UWTSD repository. And that will then become freely available as an open access article once the embargo period that the publisher has set expires. You will know that there will be some embargo limits placed by some of your funders as well. So if your research is being funded, that's something that you would need to check. And also as part of the REF for academic staff submitting as part of that, there are maximum embargo periods set by them as well, which is something that you can inquire with us and we can give you the details of that. The essential part of the green route in terms of making your articles REF compliant and open access is that as an author, you must act on acceptance. So that means making your final peer-reviewed manuscript available to us and submitting it to the UWTSD repository within 3 months of it being accepted for publication. So we have to be very clear on that. It's not within 3 months of it actually being published. It's within 3 months of it being accepted for publication. As part of the green route as well, the author doesn't generally retain copyright, and there could potentially be some barriers to reuse there as well. So that's just a very quick summary of the gold route and the green route options and how REF compliance fits into that. Okay, so university researchers are encouraged to make their work freely available online as soon as possible after publication, subject to publisher conditions, as we've just discussed. And what we really want to do at UWTSD is encourage academic staff to get in the habit of submitting their research and our research students to the repository as a matter of course. So not just as part of the REF. The REF is important, obviously, but you can submit to the research repository at any time. It doesn't have to be as part of the REF process. We also want to support student researchers to make their own open access work available and to upload their theses to our repository as well on completion of your time at UWTSD. So to this end, we've produced some handouts and some guidance videos to help you with this. And our team is also available via a dedicated inbox that you can see just there, if I just move that little window. So it's repository@uwtsd.ac.uk. I will just quickly show you the open access web pages that we've got on our website so that you can see where all of this information is. So from the library homepage, if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'll see a link to the open access web pages. So what you'll see there is links to the research repository. We also have a research data archive as well. So there's links to both of those there, and help videos and handouts to help you submit your work. We also have a tab there dedicated to e-theses submission. So for the research active students amongst you, it will be compulsory to submit your e-theses to the research repository once it's been accepted. So there's help videos and handouts on there for you as well. And also general information there about research data management and open access publishing generally. So you can see in the open access page there, there's all sorts of information about funding, about ORCID IDs, the training videos that I've mentioned, and some additional information about the REF. There's a useful link in there to a really nice, simple explanation of what the REF is, which I know lots of us are very grateful for. So keeping the details brief and to the point. Okay, so this is where I hand over to my colleague John, who's going to talk to you about the UWTSD research repository in a little bit more detail. And I believe he's going to impress you with some lovely graphs and statistics as well. No pressure, John.
Thank you very much, Sam. I'm going to try and share my... bear with me a second. Okay, so there we are. Hopefully you can see that. Yeah, brilliant. So as Sam has said, the main way that we can help you to support open access, if you're publishing your research, is to feed it into our repository. And we wouldn't necessarily expect other people online to search for UWTSD and then visit the repository or visit the library. The way the repository works is it's essentially acting like a centralized hub, which feeds into many other popular databases and search tools across the web, which is how we can increase the visibility of your research. So to give you an example here, this is a thesis, a PhD thesis published by one of our academics, Brett Aggersberg. And you can see here it's held in the repository, but it's automatically been fed out to Google Scholar. So anyone that's searching within Google Scholar can easily find the research from UWTSD that's been deposited within the repository. And that includes thesis, but also the research papers deposited by researchers and academic staff as well. And there's a direct link there to download the PDF from the repository, so you don't actually need to interact with the repository interface itself at all. Likewise, the research also feeds into our library catalogue. So again, you can see the thesis from Brett in the library catalogue here as well, with a link to download the full text. This one's particularly useful for any academics that might be publishing in journals that the library doesn't take a full text subscription to, because otherwise we can't provide access to your students for your research. But what we can do if you publish it on the repository is provide a link to your research that way, and then your students can gain access. Sam's already mentioned ethos, and for those of you who are research students here, you might be interested to know that when you complete your thesis and upload it to our research repository, they automatically get harvested into the British Library ethos system. So you can see here again the same thesis indexed in ethos. It's a bit confusing on this screenshot because it says the full text is unavailable, but actually below the part that you can see there is a direct link to our repository, and that's where they would download it from, so we can collect the statistics and see who's actually making use of UWTSD research. And the last one on this page, ProQuest dissertations and theses, you may have already used if you're researchers, and that's a global database of dissertations and theses, which is used by universities across Europe, America, and countries overseas. And all of our theses now in our repository are indexed and fed through to ProQuest. So again, that increases the discoverability of the research. Okay, so the repository has got an increasing global audience. You can see in this particular chart here from September, all of these circles represent a different country where there's been 5 or more downloads from the research repository during September alone. And obviously you'd expect the UK, but you can see here that our research has reached Turkey, Spain, India, Australia, and many other countries as well. Each one of those circles is an individual country just in that 1 month. And Sam's kind of touched on before the impact of the pandemic on open access and research. You can see here the download trends just for our repository for the last 3 years, and the massive spike back in the first lockdown period in April, where our downloads almost tripled from the research repository alone. And although things have returned more towards normal, you can see the bluey-green line here for 2020 is still quite high compared to previous years. So people are definitely taking up open access research a lot more heavily than they have done in the past, and that's only likely to increase. So that gives you an idea of the impact the pandemic is having and the general trend as well towards open access research. Taking things back a little bit closer to home then, just to give you an idea of where the research in our repository is coming from. You can see in 2016-17, most of the papers were deposited by what's now the Wales Institute of Science and Art. The following year, there was quite a big increase from education and humanities. And that's kind of continued, maybe not quite as much the following year. It's a slightly out of date now, and I haven't got the data to hand for 1920. But if you're from the Institute of Management and Health, we'd be delighted to hear from you, because we'd love to have more of your research in the repository as well. And Sam's mentioned REF, Research Excellence Framework compliance. The current REF policy is for journal article submissions to be made open access, either through the gold or green route. And if you're going down the green route, we can support you with that through the repository. So you would need to deposit as soon as possible after acceptance, not publication, and deposit your author accepted manuscript. That's that you've had accepted, and not to worry about copyright, because we can set an embargo to allow you to stay within copyright. So if you're stuck, please do get in touch. We're here to help. You can see here there's been a decrease in orange in the number of non-compliant articles over the last few years, which is really good news. So we're hoping that the message has been getting across. And you can see here in black, we've got several pending submissions as well. That's due to the embargoes. And once they've been set, providing they're within the REF requirements, then once the embargo expires, those articles will automatically become compliant. So the good news is that compliance does seem to be increasing, but we are still getting some non-compliant submissions where people are either submitting too late or they're submitting the wrong version. So please do get in touch with us if you need any assistance with that. And the very last one before we finish today is about transformative agreements. This sounds very complicated, but actually it's just a new library subscription model, which includes funding for open access article payment charges that Sam mentioned earlier. So if you want to go down the gold route, which makes your open access research a lot more publicly accessible, it means you can publish open access in the journal itself, so you're not behind a paywall. We currently have 3 agreements with publishers which enable us to do that through our library subscription. And the way this works is traditionally we've paid for read access. So we pay the journal publishers and then they provide us with the print issues or the digital access for the university. And they've now flipped that model. So actually the funding we pay goes towards the publishing side and covers the open access charges with the publisher, so that research can actually be made available open access on the web to everybody and not just to the university's subscribers. You can see a really good example here on the screen of one article which was made open access earlier this year through Wiley. It's a Welsh language article. If this had been published under our Wiley agreement last year, it would have had to have been behind a paywall. But the new agreement we have with Wiley allows primary research to be published through the gold open access route. So that now becomes accessible to everybody and not just to our university and other subscribers. We've also got agreements with Springer and with Sage. The Sage one provides a discount. It doesn't actually pay the full charge, but it provides a discount from fees of around £2,000 per article to £200 per article, which is a significant reduction. Unfortunately, we don't have the funding within the library to pay the remainder for any other gold open access charges, but they can be paid through your institute or yourself if you choose to do so, and that allows your research to be made available through the gold route. If the publishers that you are working with are not listed here, then there is more information on our website about going down the gold route or the green route through our repository if you wish to do so. So that's everything we had on our presentation today, and please do get in touch with us with the contact details on the screen if you would like any more information or you have any queries at all about open access or open access publishing.